Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to dive into something really fascinating, the building blocks of a state that was forged in a moment of, well, profound crisis. We're talking about a community that was suddenly faced with a challenge nobody had a playbook for. So here's the question that was on everyone's mind, and it was urgent. How do you replace a leader who is, well, irreplaceable? Their answer would end up shaping not just their own future, but it would also create a unique model of governance that is echoed down through the centuries.
You have to put yourself in their shoes. In 7th century Arabia, this wasn't some philosophical debate. It was real. It was immediate. Their leader, their prophet, was gone. They were completely uncharted territory. So they gathered, and the question wasn't just who's next, but maybe more importantly, how are we going to be led from now on? I mean, the survival of their entire community, their unity, it all hung in the balance.
Okay, so the first pillar they put in place was, for its time, absolutely radical. They decided leadership wouldn't be based on who your father was, not on a bloodline, but on public consent.
So how did they do it? Their answer was something called the bay'ah, and you can think of it as this public oath of allegiance, a pledge. It's basically an early kind of social contract between the person who's going to rule and the people they're ruling.
Now, this was a huge deal. Think about it. All the surrounding empires and monarchies, power was a birthright. It was passed down from father to son. The bay'ah completely flipped that on its head. It said, no, authority isn't something you inherit. It's a trust, and it's a trust that's given to you by the community.
And here's the really crucial part. This pledge was a two-way street. It wasn't just the people promising blind obedience. Not at all. It was a covenant, a real contract. The people said, we'll follow you, but the ruler was also saying, I promise to rule justly, according to the law.
You know, that whole idea of a ruler's responsibility, it leads us right into the second pillar. And this one is huge. It's the principle that a leader isn't above the law. In fact, they're directly accountable to the very people they govern.
So in his very first speech as the new leader, the Caliph, Abu Bakr gets up there, and he doesn't talk about having a divine right to rule or about his absolute power. Nope. He does something, well, pretty extraordinary. He lays out the terms of his own accountability. He actually asks the people, correct me if I'm wrong.
Just think about what he was promising in that speech. He's saying, you can hold me accountable. He's promising to protect the weakest members of society and make sure they get their rights. And maybe most importantly, he's saying you should only obey me as long as I obey God. It's this whole new vision of leadership where authority isn't absolute, it's conditional.
So what does this do? It gives the community a foundational right, and you could even say a duty, to be part of their own governance. It completely reframes the relationship. It's not master and subject anymore. It's a partnership, a joint effort to uphold justice.
All right, this brings us to pillar number 3, and it builds on the last one perfectly. If a ruler is accountable, well, who or what are they accountable to? What's the standard that keeps them from just making stuff up as they go?
While the answer was crystal clear, the law couldn't be based on the ruler's personal whims. The ultimate source of law, the supreme source, was divine revelation. That means the Qur'an and the Sunnah, which is basically the teachings and practices of the prophet. This made sure that the law itself was king, standing above everyone, and that includes the Caliph.
And this verse from the Qur'an really sums it up. It was the guiding principle. Justice wasn't something humans just invented. It was seen as a divine command, a sacred trust. And that's what truly establishes the rule of law, not the rule of a single person.
But, you know, it's one thing to say this in theory, it's another thing to live it. And there's this incredible story from Abu Bakr's time that shows just how deeply he believed in this idea, that he himself had to submit to the law he was supposed to uphold.
So get this, the Caliph, the head of state, is in a hurry and he accidentally strikes a common man. His first reaction isn't to cover it up or use his power, it's instant regret. He calls the man over, hands him the very thing he struck him with and says, settle the score. Just think about that. He's insisting that this citizen enact justice upon him. In that one moment, the ruler and the ruled were absolutely equal before the law.
And this deep, profound sense of accountability didn't just stop with the law, it carried right on over into the state's money, which brings us to our fourth pillar, the idea that a leader is a servant of the public treasury, not its master.
What Abu Bakr did here was, again, pretty radical. He took all the wealth that came into the state treasury and distributed it equally to everyone. We're talking free people, enslaved people, men, women, young, old, it didn't matter.
He saw it as a public trust that belonged to everybody.
Now, as you can imagine, not everyone was on board with this. Some people came to him and said, hey, what about the people who've been here longer, who have a better track record of service? Shouldn't they get a bigger piece of the pie? And, on the surface, that sounds pretty logical, doesn't it?
But his answer is just brilliant. It gets right to the heart of what this state was all about. He basically said, look, their rewards for their service and their virtue, that's with God. That's for the next life. This is about livelihood. This is about making sure people can live. And when it comes to that, giving everyone an equal share is just better than playing favorites.
Okay, so we've looked at these 4 pillars one by one. Let's step back for a second and see how they all lock together to form the foundation of this new state.
So you've got the people's pledge, leadership by consent. The accountable ruler, a leader who's actually under the law. The scales of justice, a supreme law that comes from divine revelation. And the open treasury, a state that serves the welfare of all its people. See, these weren't just random ideas. They were a complete, interconnected system of governance, designed to create justice, to stop tyranny before it could start, and to build a stable society. All on that foundation of a contract and accountability.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. These ideas, a social contract, leaders as servants, accountability to a higher law, shared public responsibility, these were being put into practice 1,400 years ago. And when you think about it, they're still at the heart of so many of our political debates today. It really makes you stop and think, what can these ancient principles teach us about what true, just, and responsible leadership should look like right now in our world?